Whispers of Love. Tonight's thought. Chapter 1. The First Whisper. There are nights when silence feels heavier than words, when the air itself seems to remember something we've forgotten. And in that silence, if you listen closely enough, you might hear it. The first whisper of love. It never begins loudly. It doesn't rush. It doesn't ask for attention. It hides between heartbeats, in the stillness that comes right before you fall asleep. Love begins like that. Quietly, gently, without asking permission. Maybe you felt it once, in the way someone looked at you for half a second too long, or in the warmth of a voice that lingered in your mind long after it was gone. They say love is an emotion, but I think it's a sound, a soft echo that lives between two souls who accidentally recognize each other. The world calls it coincidence, but your heart knows better. Sometimes, love begins long before you meet the person. It starts as a longing, a quiet ache that says, "I'm missing something I've never had." That's the whisper. That's the beginning. The first time I heard it, I didn't understand what it was. I thought it was loneliness. That soft ache that comes at 2 a.m. when the city sleeps and your thoughts won't. But now I know. It was love searching for its name. The heart doesn't fall in love suddenly. It unfolds, like dawn touching the horizon, like light finding its way through the cracks of an old window. At first, you barely notice it. Then, slowly, it fills everything. Love has no shape, but it leaves traces. A scent on a scarf, a melody you hum without knowing why. A sudden warmth when you hear someone's laughter. The universe has its own language, and sometimes it speaks through a whisper. I remember the first time I truly listened. The room was dark. The rain was whispering against the glass. The world outside felt far away, but my thoughts were alive, wild, soft, curious. There was no music, no voice, just a silence so deep it almost spoke. And in that silence, I felt it. A presence. Not a person, but a feeling that someone, somewhere, was thinking of me. Maybe that's how love starts, not with meeting, but with awareness, with a soul recognizing another, even from miles away. A whisper that says, "You're not alone. I found you, even if you don't see me yet." Love is strange. It's both fragile and unstoppable. It lives in moments too small to notice, and yet it changes everything. You don't plan it. You don't prepare for it. You just wake up one morning, and the world feels slightly different. Colors are softer. Music feels deeper. Even the silence seems to hum. That's the first whisper, the shift, the invisible turning point where your heart begins to listen. Sometimes, the whisper comes through a memory, sometimes through a dream, and sometimes it arrives through pain, as if love sneaks in through the cracks of a broken heart. Because the truth is, love doesn't always enter through joy. Because the truth is, love doesn't always enter through joy. Often, it walks in when you're tired, when you've stopped expecting anything beautiful. It finds you in your quietest moment and simply says, "I'm here." No fireworks, no grand gestures, just a whisper, the kind that feels like home, even if you've never been there before. People often ask, how do you know when it's love? You don't. Not at first. You just feel a stillness that wasn't there before. A peace that doesn't need a reason. The heart knows before the mind does. And by the time you realize it, the whisper has already become a voice. You start noticing little things. How your favorite song suddenly sounds like a memory. How the night feels warmer even when you're alone. How your heart starts speaking in sentences you've never said out loud. That's when you know you've heard the first whisper. Love isn't a story that starts with once upon a time. It begins with a pause, the moment between two breaths. It begins with silence, with patience, with a gentle echo that asks for nothing. The first whisper is a promise, not of forever, not of perfection, but of presence. It's the universe saying something beautiful is on its way. And if you listen closely, you might realize it's already here. So tonight, close your eyes. Let the world fade for a while. Listen to the rhythm of your breathing, the small, quiet music of being alive. Somewhere inside that stillness, there's a whisper waiting for you. Maybe it's a memory. Maybe it's a person. Maybe it's love itself, softly calling your name. And when you hear it, don't be afraid. Don't rush to understand. Just listen, because every great love begins this way, with one silent heartbeat and a whisper that never ends. Chapter 2. The space between us. They say distance breaks things, but sometimes it teaches you what's unbreakable. Between you and me, there's silence now. Miles of air, oceans of time ... And yet, somehow, I still feel you here, in the space between breaths. Love doesn't vanish when the people drift apart. It changes shape. It becomes invisible. Like air, impossible to hold, yet impossible to live without. Some nights, I reach out into that emptiness, not to find you, but to remember how it felt when you were close. There's a kind of love that lives inside memory. It doesn't fade. It just learns to whisper instead of speak. I think of you sometimes, not as someone who left, but as someone who still lives ... quietly ... in the space between us. Distance, it's not only measured in miles. It's in unread messages, in pauses between calls, in the words we never found the courage to say. And yet, love remains. It lingers like the scent of a letter never sent, like a dream that ends before you wake. Do you ever feel it too? That quiet ache that doesn't hurt, but also never leaves. That's the sound of connection, stretching, but not breaking. Sometimes, I imagine your world, the way the sun must look where you are. Do you stop for a second and think of me? Does the air around you ever feel heavier, like a memory trying to reach across the miles? Because I do. Every night, love, when stretched by distance, doesn't disappear. It deepens. It becomes patient. It learns how to wait. And waiting ... is its own kind of devotion. There's beauty in the space between us. A quiet understanding that love doesn't need constant proof. It just is, like the moon that pulls the ocean. Even from far away, you don't see the pull, but you can feel it in every wave that touches the shore. That's how love survives distance, not through presence, but through gravity. When I think of you, I don't imagine the distance anymore. I imagine the invisible thread that ties us. Thin, soft, but unbreakable. You're there, I'm here, and between us, there's silence that feels alive. Sometimes I speak into that silence, not out loud, just in thought. A whisper I know you'll never hear. And somehow, that's enough. Because maybe love isn't about being heard. Maybe it's about knowing that somewhere, someone feels the same quiet pull you do. When I close my eyes, I can almost hear your voice. Not the sound of it, but the rhythm. The way you used to breathe between words. Memory is strange that way. It doesn't remember perfectly. It remembers emotionally. And emotions, they never fade with distance. You see, love doesn't travel in straight lines. It moves like light in water, bending, reaching, finding new paths. Even when we think it's gone, it finds another way to arrive. I once read that the stars we see at night are light from the past. They're glow traveling across time to reach us long after they've changed. Maybe love is like that. Maybe what I feel for you now is just light, sent long ago, still traveling toward your heart. Sometimes I wonder, if I met you again, would it feel the same? Would my heart recognize you instantly? Or would it pause, confused, searching for the whisper it once knew? Maybe it wouldn't matter, because love doesn't always ask for reunion. Sometimes it just wants remembrance. There's a peace that comes when you stop fighting the distance, when you realize love doesn't end just because people walk away. Love ends only when we stop listening. And I still listen. Every raindrop, every midnight breeze, every shadow on my wall. Somehow it carries your rhythm. Maybe I've memorized it too deeply. Maybe I don't want to forget. Because even pain, when it comes from love, still feels sacred. If you're listening, wherever you are, know that I kept the promise we never said out loud. To care ... quietly. To remember ... gently. To love without asking for return. Because love doesn't belong to distance. It belongs to the moments that refuse to fade, to the whispers that echo long after the goodbye. Maybe one day, when the air is still and the night is kind, you'll feel it. That soft, familiar pull in your chest. That's me, not in body, but in thought, in the quiet between seconds. So tonight, don't fear the space between us. Don't fight it. Let it breathe. Because distance isn't emptiness. It's just another way of saying, I love you, from far enough to see you clearly. And maybe that's the purest kind of love there is. Chapter 3. Letters Never Sent. There are words I never said. Letters I wrote but never sent. Maybe they were never meant to reach you. Maybe they were only meant to find me. Some loves live through silence. Some exist only in what we could never say aloud. And sometimes the things left unsaid are the ones that echo the loudest. I still remember the first letter I didn't send. It started simply, I miss you. Just 3 words, too small to hold what I really felt. So I kept writing, page after page, trying to describe a silence that had your name written inside it. But every time I finished, I folded the paper, placed it in a box, and told myself, tomorrow. Tomorrow never came. Love, I've learned, isn't always about speaking. Sometimes it's about learning to hold the storm inside you and still be gentle. There are so many letters now. Some written at 2 a.m., some under sunlight, some in tears, and some in complete peace. Each one begins the same way. I was thinking of you. Each one ends the same way. But I hope you're happy. Maybe that's the story of love we don't finish. 1,000 beginnings, 1,000 silences, and one endless wish for someone else's peace. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I had sent just one of them. Would you have come back? Would it have changed anything? Or would it have broken the quiet balance that time built between us? There's beauty in words left behind. They become time capsules, frozen pieces of our hearts. Even if no one ever reads them, they keep a record of what was real. Because love doesn't need to be witnessed to be true. I remember the last letter I wrote to you. I didn't write it on paper. I wrote it in my mind, on the edge between dream and waking. I told you everything. how the world feels quieter now, how your absence became a kind of music, how I still catch myself smiling when I remember the way you used to say my name. Then I stopped writing because I realized you'd never hear it. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some words aren't meant to be received, only released. Letters never sent are like prayers whispered into the wind. They go somewhere. We just don't know where. When we write, we're not always talking to the person. Sometimes we're talking to the memory or to the version of ourselves that still believes in them. And in that way, letters are a form of healing. Each word is a goodbye we learn to live with. I once thought love needed to be seen to exist. Now I know it only needs to be felt, even if it's quiet, even if it's one-sided, even if it ends. So tonight, I write one last letter I'll never send. Maybe you'll never read it. Maybe no one will. But I'll leave it here, in the air, in the silence, in the whisper. Dear you, if by some miracle this reaches you, know that I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I'm just grateful. Grateful that I once knew the sound of your laughter. Grateful that I learned how deep silence can feel. Grateful that love, even when it ends, teaches us how to stay soft. You taught me that words don't need to be spoken to be heard, that even distance can't erase connection, that even endings can be beautiful if they're honest. And if you ever think of me, let it be kindly, let it be warm, let it be like the sound of rain against a window you no longer open, because love like ours doesn't die. It just learns to whisper from afar. Always. Me. Sometimes I still open that imaginary box in my mind, the one full of unsent letters. I read them quietly, not to remember you, but to remember who I was when I loved you. And maybe that's what love really leaves behind. Not the person, but the version of ourselves who dared to feel that deeply. Because the truth is, every letter ever written, even the ones never sent, always find their way home. Chapter 4, The Night We Forgot the Stars. There was a night when the sky forgot to shine. The stars hid behind clouds, and the moon, she looked tired, as if she too was mourning something lost. That was the night we forgot the stars. The night we let silence speak louder than love. Somewhere between I'm fine and I don't know anymore, we lost each other, not in distance, but in understanding. I still remember how your voice sounded that night. It wasn't angry, just distant, like someone standing on the shore, watching a ship disappear into fog. And I didn't know how to call you back. I didn't know that love could sink, even when no one lets go. People think love ends suddenly, but it doesn't. It fades, slowly, quietly, like the last light of dusk. Before the night takes over, you don't even notice it at first. You keep talking, keep laughing, keep pretending that nothing changed. Until one day, you look at the person beside you and realize the light is gone. The night we forgot the stars. The world didn't collapse. The clock still ticked. The rain still fell. The city still breathed. But something inside us went still. Something small, but infinite. Maybe that's how hearts break. Not in noise, but in quiet surrender. I remember trying to look for the stars that night. I searched the whole sky, as if finding one small light could bring us back. But the clouds were thick, the air heavy. And then I realized the stars weren't gone. We were just standing too far from them. Love is like that sometimes. The light never disappears. We just forget how to look up. We forget that even in the darkest night, the stars are still there, waiting to be seen again. That night, you turned away first, not out of anger, but out of exhaustion. And I stayed, not because I didn't want to leave, but because I didn't know where else to go. Two hearts, both tired, both silent, and silence. It can be louder than words ever will be. Sometimes I wonder if I had said something different, would the stars have come back? If I had reached for your hand instead of folding my own, would the night have been brighter? But regret, like love, has no answers, only echoes. I still walk under that same sky sometimes. The stars are back now. They shine as if nothing ever happened. But I can't help wondering, do they remember that night too? The night they hid for us. The night we forgot them. The truth is, we never really lost the stars. We just stopped believing in their light. And maybe love works the same way. It doesn't die. It just waits for us to remember how to look for it again. Sometimes, I still feel you when the wind moves, in the quiet between thunder and rain, in the soft hum of the night. It's not the same, but it's enough to remind me that what we had was real. That once, for a moment, we lit up the sky together. We forgot the stars that night, but they never forgot us. They've been waiting ever since, patient, eternal, forgiving. Maybe one day, when we've learned to forgive ourselves, we'll see them again. Until then, I carry their light in small ways, in the way I listen, in the way I breathe, in the way I whisper your name without sound. Because even when love fades from sight, it leaves a glow behind, a quiet reminder that once we found something infinite. So if tonight feels dark, if your world feels empty, look up. The stars are still there, even if you can't see them. And if you listen closely enough, you might just hear them whisper, "We remember you." Chapter 5. The Forgiveness Within. They say forgiveness is something we give to others, but I think it begins here, inside the quiet corners of our own hearts. There was a time I carried every hurt like a secret, every regret, every word I wished I hadn't said. They lived in me, like tiny shadows, following even in the brightest light. I thought healing meant forgetting. That time would make the pain dissolve. But time doesn't erase. It only softens what we're brave enough to face. And one day, I realized the person I needed to forgive was not the one who left, not the one who hurt me, but the one who stayed silent inside me. Me. Forgiveness isn't loud. It doesn't announce itself. It arrives quietly, in small moments. Like when your chest no longer tightens at the sound of a certain name, or when you can remember without flinching. That's forgiveness. Not the absence of pain, but the return of peace. For so long, I blamed myself for loving too deeply, for not knowing when to let go, for believing in forever. But love, even when it breaks, is never a mistake. To feel that much, to give that freely, is its own kind of courage. We're all learning, aren't we? How to be gentle with ourselves, how to look at our scars, and see stories instead of shame. Because forgiveness is not about erasing the past. It's about changing the way we see it. There was a morning when I woke up and realized the ache was different. Not gone, but softer, like a storm that finally tired itself out. And in that stillness, I whispered, "It's okay." Those two words changed everything. It's okay. Not I'm healed. Not I've forgotten. Just, it's okay. Because that's what forgiveness sounds like. Not triumph, but tenderness. We spend so much time trying to forgive others that we forget how much we owe ourselves. We owe ourselves patience. We owe ourselves kindness. We owe ourselves the same compassion we once gave to those who hurt us. Forgiveness isn't a doorway you walk through once. It's a path. And sometimes you take one step forward and 2 steps back. That's still progress. I used to think forgiving meant forgetting what happened. Now I know it means remembering without anger. It means seeing the person you were then and saying you did the best you could. You see, love and forgiveness are twins born from the same light. You cannot have one without the other, because to love deeply is to be willing to hurt deeply, and to forgive is to choose love again, even after pain. Sometimes I imagine speaking to the person I used to be, the one who cried through the nights, who questioned everything, who thought the ache would never end. I would tell them, you're going to make it, not because it stops hurting, but because you'll learn to hold it softly. There is beauty in forgiveness. It's not dramatic, not cinematic. It's quiet. It's a deep breath that finally feels free. It's standing in front of a mirror and smiling at the person you once blamed. It's knowing you can love again without fear of breaking. Because once you've forgiven yourself, you realize you were never broken. You were just transforming. The past doesn't disappear when you forgive. It just loses its power to define you. The wounds remain, but they glow now, like constellations, guiding you instead of haunting you. So tonight, if you're listening and your heart still hurts, whisper softly to yourself, "It's okay. I forgive you. You did your best." Say it once, then again, and again, until the words stop feeling like a lie, until they start feeling like home. Because healing isn't a single moment, it's a conversation between who you were and who you're becoming. Maybe that's what love was trying to teach us all along, that to truly love someone else, we must first learn to love the one inside, the one who stayed, the one who survived, the one who kept whispering, even when the stars went quiet. So if you're standing in the ruins of what was, don't rush to rebuild. Just sit there for a while. Feel the wind move through the cracks. Let it wash over you. And when it does, you'll notice something beautiful. You're breathing again. And that breath, that quiet, steady breath, is forgiveness. Chapter 6. The memory that stayed. Some memories never leave. They live quietly inside us, not as pain anymore, but as echoes of who we once were. You were one of those memories, not the kind that haunts, not the kind that hurts, but the kind that simply stays, like sunlight through old curtains, or the scent of rain on a road I once walked. There was a time I thought I had to let everything go, every trace, every reminder. I deleted the photos, threw away the letters, avoided the songs that once held your name. But no matter how much I tried to erase you, something always remained. A softness in how I speak, a patience I didn't have before, a calmness that grew from once being broken. That's how I knew you never really left. You just changed shape. Love, when it's true, doesn't disappear. It simply transforms from presence into memory, from touch into thought, from heartbeat into quiet knowing. Sometimes, when the world goes still, I catch myself smiling for no reason, and I realize I was remembering you again. Not the goodbye, not the ending, but the small, beautiful moments that made it all worth it. Do you ever wonder what happens to the love that's left behind? The kind that doesn't find its way back. The kind that stays unspoken, unfinished. I think it becomes part of us, woven into the way we see the world, into the quiet kindness we show to others. Because when you love deeply once, you never really stop. You just start loving differently. Maybe that's what your memory became. A light that never asks for attention, but always glows somewhere deep inside. There's a peace in that, knowing we don't have to hold on anymore, because what was meant to stay, stayed on its own. There are nights when I still hear your laughter, not clearly, just the rhythm of it. It plays in the background of old thoughts, like a melody I once knew the words to. And I don't chase it away anymore. I just listen, because it reminds me of a version of myself that was brave enough to love you. We often think healing means forgetting, but healing, I've learned it, means remembering differently. It's when you can look back and smile instead of ache, when the memory that once made you cry now makes you whisper, "Thank you." I used to be afraid of remembering. I thought memories would trap me, keep me tied to the past. But now I see they're not chains, they're roots. They remind us where we've been, what we've felt, and how far we've come. You see, some people come into our lives not to stay forever, but to leave us changed forever. You were that for me. A chapter one can always return to, even if the story moved on. There's beauty in remembering without needing to relive. It's a kind of quiet maturity, a silent acceptance that not all love stories are meant to last, but all of them mean something. And maybe that's enough. Sometimes I wonder if you remember too. If something, a sound, a smell, a song, ever pulls you back to us. To that time when everything was simple, and the world felt small enough for just two hearts to fit inside. If you do, I hope it feels gentle. I hope it brings warmth, not sadness. Because that's how it feels for me now. There are no regrets left, only gratitude for every word we spoke, for every silence we shared, for every heartbeat that once matched mine. Because even though time has carried us apart, it can't take away what we once were. Love doesn't ask to last forever. It just asks to be real while it lives. And ours was. So if this is how I remember you, I'm okay with that. A quiet memory, a gentle echo, a part of me that stayed, even after everything else changed. Because some people don't leave. They just become the music you hear when the world goes silent. And maybe that's enough. Chapter 7, The Echo After Goodbye. Love ends, but its echo continues. not as longing, but as understanding. Every story ends with silence, not the kind that hurts, but the kind that understands. There was a day, I didn't realize it at first, when I stopped waiting for you, not because I stopped caring, but because something inside me whispered, it's time. I think love never truly ends. It just learns new ways to exist. It changes its shape, from presence into memory, from heartbeat into echo. And that echo, it lives quietly, in the way I breathe, in the way I listen to the world now. Once, I used to fear goodbyes. I thought they were doors closing forever. But now I know. Every goodbye is just an echo of something that was real. Love doesn't need to stay to be true. Sometimes it just needs to have been, because even after we let go, the echo remains, a gentle sound reminding us that we once knew something beautiful. There are still moments when I feel you, not in dreams, not in words, but in small, quiet ways. When sunlight hits the window just right, when the night air feels familiar, when a song I've never heard sounds like something we used to hum. You're not here, but somehow you are. Pause. Long silence asterisk. Maybe that's what love really is. Not the holding on, but the staying within. Not the presence, but the echo that lingers after. When you said goodbye, I didn't understand. It felt like an ending, like the air itself had changed. But now, after all this time, I see it differently. Goodbye wasn't the end. It was the beginning of something softer, a quiet friendship between my heart and your absence. The echo of you lives not in what was lost, but in what was learned. Patience, kindness, the courage to love again. It's strange, isn't it? How something so painful can become something so peaceful. How what once broke us can later hold us together in memory. That's the gift of time. It turns ache into art. It teaches us to listen differently, to find music in silence. There's a part of me that will always reach for you, not out of longing, but out of gratitude, because you were the echo that taught me how to hear my own heart. If love is a voice, then goodbye is its echo, and somewhere between the two, we find peace. Tonight, as the world falls quiet, I sit in the stillness and I listen to the echo after goodbye. It's faint, almost gone, but it's there, gentle, steady, like a breath that never stopped. And in that sound, I realize nothing ever truly ends. Love just changes form, becoming the silence we carry kindly, the whisper we leave behind in the hearts of those who once listened. So if you hear this someday, know that I'm not waiting anymore. I'm simply remembering, gratefully, quietly, because even after goodbye, you're still part of the sound. And maybe that's what we all become in the end. Not voices, not memories, but echoes, whispers of love that never truly fade.